Yes, Dulat, welcome to the show. Congratulations on the book, which I think is
Thank you very
eminently
much.
readable.
You're very kind. Thank you.
It's supposed to be the story of your friendship with Farooq Abdullah, which of course it is, but it's also probably the most incisive and insightful history of what's happened in Kashmir in the last 30 years that I've read.
That's
Because
right.
you've seen it through Farooq's eyes and your eyes, and in many ways you were key players on both sides of the fence,
That's
from
right.
Delhi and from Kashmir.
That's right.
Now, unfortunately, at least for the next few hours, because these things don't last, the book has been overshadowed by a controversy. The suggestion is that you've said somewhere in this book, Farooq Abdullah actually approved of Article 370 being abrogated and had been told about this by Narendra Modi when he and Omar met Narendra Modi, and that all the phrase people have used in Twitter, etc., is he shed crocodile tears. Now, this suits one narrative, which is that 370 was always popular with the Kashmiri leadership and that these guys were liars. Was that your intention, or was that actually what happened?
No, that is neither my intention nor is it true, because I've known the Kashmiri leadership.
Yeah.
Over the years, and neither Farooq nor Omar would favor abrogation, nor would any other Kashmiri leader worth his salt. No, not at all. And nor has it been my intention to project it as such. Not at all. What I was saying in the book, or what I said in the book, is that look, Farooq has always been with Delhi. That's what he told me that day, and that's what his daughter told me. The same one who's now being very angry and critical.
And tweeting again.
And tweeting. She told me, and Farooq told me that day, that we've always been with India. We've always been with Delhi. So why this? Why did we have to be locked up? And if this had to be done, the only thing he said, if this had to be done, then at least we should have been taken into confidence. So that meeting with the Prime Minister, nobody knows what happened. I've asked Farooq and I've asked Omar, and both denied that they were told anything.
Yeah, there's a bit where you quote Farooq as saying, if they had taken us, if they had consulted us, we could maybe have passed this through the assembly. That's the one that people are seizing on.
Yeah, well, that did happen, that between the two of us. He did say that. But the implication again was that, we've always been with Delhi. And if it came to that, we could even. Now, here he was exaggerating, It was like, you remember that resolution for, I think it was in 2000, the National Conference resolution in the Assembly.
Yeah.
For
asking for full autonomy.
For autonomy.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, I was forgetting. Yeah. For autonomy. So it's a similar kind of thing, Sometimes Farooq tends to
be a little grandiose in his statement.
There's a little slight exaggeration. Okay. But knowing Farooq, I can say that he didn't mean anything of the sort. What he was saying was that if it had to be done, why were we not informed? Why were we not taken into confidence? Maybe we could have helped in some way.
Okay. You think he could have helped, or you think his position now would be he would never have helped and he would have opposed it?
I think knowing Farooq, he might have helped in some way or the other. Yeah.
Such as what? What could he have done?
Well, he would have said that there's no need to send all these troops. There's no need to use force. We can find some way of. I can't. I don't know. Farooq is the politician.
Yeah.
He should have the answer to that. But what he was implying was that, yeah, there are ways. But if there is total denial that the Prime Minister never told them that, then where is the question of helping or
Okay. So there's two interpretations of what you've said. Interpretation one, which is the interpretation we see on social media, is that Farooq had a secret meeting with the Prime Minister. You say you never found out what was said. After that, when 370 happened, he said that they should have consulted him and he would have helped get it through. It's been interpreted to mean by many people on social media that perhaps he was told by the Prime Minister and that he was actually in support of it, but was upset that he wasn't allowed to come out openly and support it. That's one interpretation. There's what you're now saying, is that the Prime Minister met Omar and Farooq, did not give them any indication that this happened, and that this was then imposed on them, they were arrested. And as people who'd always supported Delhi, the Indian state, the Indianness of Kashmir, they felt betrayed because their position was that if you wanted to do something so dramatic, you should have taken us and the Kashmiris into confidence.
Absolutely.
Is that what you really meant?
That's it. That's it. Because if he had been taken into confidence, or if they had been taken into confidence, then this latter statement, which is attributed to him, would never have happened.
Yeah, okay.
No,
I'm going to stop you. There's another bit that's controversial in which you say that Farooq said to you that he wanted to come back as Chief Minister of Kashmir, but because Omar lost the election, the last one, there was a problem. That also has been objected to. Did he actually say to you that he wanted to come back as Chief Minister of Kashmir?
He said it to me 3-4 times.
Really?
There's no doubt about it. He did want to come back as Chief Minister. I mean, that story is absolutely clear. What happened was that Umar was to come to Parliament. As you know, he contested the Parliament election. But he lost in Baramulla. Now, having lost in Baramulla, and with the sweeping majority in the Assembly, Farooq thought, well, maybe now it's time for me to step back and let the sun rise now.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot about fathers and sons in the book. There's Farooq's relationship with his father. And you suggest, though you don't actually say it, you quote other people as saying it, that the Sheikh, though a great man, was not necessarily the brightest of people. That Farooq, at least in your book, comes across as much more of a visionary, much more committed to union with India, to Kashmir progressing with India. Is that fair?
That's right. I've gone a step beyond that to say, although it may not be in the book, but that I feel, I never met the Sheikh. I never saw the Sheikh. But having read about his times and his story, I think Farooq is a bigger leader than the
Sheikh Abdullah?
Yeah, okay. Because he's had a much rougher time.
Well, he didn't spend years in jail like Sheikh Abdullah did.
That he saw to that because that's one of the reasons he stayed on the right side of Delhi.
Okay.
He didn't want to go to jail. He said so. Yeah. He said, my politics is not about going to jail. Why would I want to go to jail? I will stay on the right side of Delhi. And I think if you read that book, he was happiest with Devi Gowda.
I know, I've seen that.
Yeah, because Devi Gowda never interfered. For Devi Gowda, Farooq Abdullah was Kashmir, and that was good enough. Finished.
In fact, Devi Gowda is one of the surprising, favorable characters in the book. He's portrayed as somebody who was willing to let Kashmir be.
He's still a friend of Farooq's,
Really? Okay,
yeah.
even now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very much
now,
so.
the other father-son relationship that appears in the book is Omar and Farooq.
That's right.
Though you're very careful not to say anything critical of Omar, the impression that one gets is that you see Farooq as being this larger-than-life figure who reaches out to the people and therefore has an understanding of Kashmir. And through good times and bad, it's that understanding that sees him through. That's your portrait of Farooq. Yeah. The Omar that comes off in your book, you use the phrase, I think, security conscious for him or security minded 2 or 3 times, is you also say, and not necessarily in a nice way, that he still thinks like the head boy of Sanar, that you portray him as being this rather straight-jacketed fellow with a very sort of goody-goody one way of doing things approach to Kashmir, who is unable to reach out to people in the way that Farooq did. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I mean, Farooq is Farooq and Omar is Omar. Omar is, like you and me, a public school product, and he's remained like that, It's not easy for a public school guy to suddenly overnight become a politician. It'll take a while. And I don't think he'll ever reach that height that his father has. You know what has happened, and people don't, I think, understand or appreciate it, that Farooq has changed a whole lot since the abrogation. It hurt him deeply. And today in Kashmir, there is much more empathy for him than in the past. Because, he created the PhD, got everybody together. And I remember talking to him and asking him that how will you be able to accommodate everybody? He said it's not about accommodation now, it's about togetherness, and we have to stick together. So the idea of that PhD, as I see it, is, in a way, he was creating his own little assembly.
Yeah. Okay. Let me take this Omar Farooq thing a little bit further. You suggest, and that's been whispered but never actually written about, you suggest that Advani, Vajpayee, Brijesh Mishra really wanted to ease Farooq out. Their chosen candidate was Omar. They wanted to promote Omar. That they tried very hard to get Farooq out of the picture in Kashmir by promising him the vice presidentship. And you say maybe it would have happened, but it didn't happen because Krishan Kant was turned down, Alexander was turned down, Abdul Kalam became the president, and you couldn't have had two Muslims as president and vice president. So Farooq's hopes were dashed, and you call this a betrayal. But you suggest that all of these promises were essentially to get him out because Omar was Delhi's chosen candidate, at least in that Vajpayee era. Is that what you intended to say?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Explain that to me.
No doubt about it. In fact, now, and I think indicated or said that in the book, that I was a party to this whole fraud against Farooq. I don't think...
Not everyone has read the book, so just explain to us what happened and how you were a party to it.
You see what happened, what I am privy to.
Yeah.
Of course, Farooq tells me or told me that the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, had also assured him that they would make him Vice President. I was not privy to that, but what I am privy to is a dinner at our place where Brijesh said to him...
This is Brijesh Mishra.
Brijesh Mishra, the NSA.
Then the most powerful man in India after Vajpayee.
Absolutely. Yeah. Saying to him that, Dr. Saab, why don't you come to Delhi and let Omar go to Srinagar and we'll make you Vice President here. And Farooq said, sure. I'd do it. And then, actually, he hauled me up a couple of months later. It was May of that year. And when he summoned me to his office, which he's never done. We've always met at home, but he called me. He was angry. And he said, what's happening in Delhi? I said, nothing's happening in Delhi. Will they make me Vice President? I said, of course they'll make you Vice President. He said, I don't think so. I said, you've been told by A, B, C, haven't you? He said, yes. But I don't trust any of them. So that is Farooq. And he was right.
He was right.
Absolutely right.
Now, there is this suggestion that Delhi always preferred Omar, which you just confirmed. Why was that?
You see, Omar was easier, more pliable. It's more comfortable dealing with Omar,
Why? Because if you look at the aftermath of the abrogation, Omar has been anything but pliable. No? He's come out against it. He's talked about how he was lied to by the governor. He's talked about how he was arrested with no information being given. That's not being pliable.
See, I'm talking of 2002.
Okay, all right. So when he was younger.
When he was much younger. And let's not forget that he was Minister of State for Commerce with Vajpayee, and then Minister of State for External Affairs.
Yeah.
And I didn't intend to say this, but let me say it, that on my suggestion, Vajpayee took him on most of his trips abroad after that.
You said that in the book. Actually.
Okay, I have.
You have said that in the book.
I have said that. Okay. Yeah. Because I felt that since there is general approval for Omar, then why should Omar not benefit by it? Why should he not go on these trips, And he did go and he made an impact. And as I've said, I think in the book, the more Vajpayee saw of Omar, the more he liked him. Farooq is not so likable immediately, instantly.
Really? Why? He's very warm, he's affectionate. Why is he
he's warm and affectionate, but he doesn't let you know him so easily. He doesn't let you get to him so easily. It takes time.
You've said that in the book. You said very few people really know Farooq, which surprised me because at least the Farooq you see in the media or when I've interviewed him, unlike Omar who keeps his own counsel, he is much more forthcoming, much more
Of course,
extroverted.
he's more forthcoming. Of course, he's more forthcoming. But politically, he's not a pushover, you know. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
That in Farooq's case, if you give him an even deal or a level playing field and be reasonable, he'll be with you. But if you think that you can push him, no, you can't. You'll never be able to do it.
So there's a lot of steel beneath the laughter and the hugging
Of
and
course
all
there
that.
is. Of course there is.
Okay. And you think that's true Omar as well?
Omar is easier, you know. There is that public school boy in him, and he's correct. He's straight. He's honest, more honest than his father, I would say. But
brighter, perhaps also, and with a greater attention span.
No, I don't think
I
so.
don't think so.
No, Farooq is very bright. He might not give you that impression. And at
His
the point is
his attention span. I mean, it's been said famously about him at meetings that he has ants in his pants.
that is a
after
distinct.
5 minutes, he
Yeah,
disappears.
because Farooq doesn't suffer fools. You know, if he wants to listen to you, he'll listen to you. And if he doesn't want to listen to you, then he'll say, "Buzz off! Why are you wasting my time?" kind of thing. You know. But Farooq understands human beings very well. He understands who to talk to, who not to talk to, who to be with, who not to be with.
You could argue, I mean, there are different views of looking at this father-son relationship. You could argue that Omar, because he's probably more introverted as a person, more proper as a person, who grew up outside of politics, who grew up in public school, spent 5 years in the corporate sector in Bombay, and Farooq, who grew up partly in being a doctor, but once he gave that up within Sheikh Abdullah's family and understood politics, they were two different people. That could be one interpretation for their approach. The other one, and the slightly cynical one, is that you're not exactly young. Farooq's not exactly young. You're just two old guys bemoaning the good times and not liking the new generation. It is a possibility you will concede.
If you want to put it that way, I'm okay with it. It's not really true.
Okay, why is it true?
In fact, if you watch now, since Omar's coming back as chief minister, and incidentally, I think I mentioned that during Omar's swearing in, Farooq had tears in his eyes because he saw his son rising. And ever since then, he's been very protective of his son. He never has uttered a single bad word about Omar. Whenever I've asked him, I said, "How's Omar doing?" He says he's doing well. He's working very hard. You know? And love for Omar also has grown in this period. In fact, I've mentioned the word glorifying Omar. Not only loving him now, but glorifying Omar.
Since we're talking about the controversy, and since it's obvious to anyone watching this interview how much you, and I use the term advisedly, love Farooq and admire him, why do you think there's been this controversy with people selectively picking on bits of your book and misinterpreting it?
You see, there's always been this thing in Delhi, somehow to run down Farooq.
Okay.
So they've caught hold of this thing that he told Dulat that, you know, I'm not against abrogation. He never said anything of the sort.
So do you think, therefore, that this is just misinterpretation by people reading it? Or is there a campaign?
No, there is a campaign now. If it was one single person, I would say that it's okay. It's misinterpretation. But there is a campaign to run down Farooq.
And to use the book
whether the family understands it, whether Omar understands it or not, there is a campaign to run down Farooq.
And who's behind the campaign?
Delhi. Some people here. The media here.
The media here or the ruling dispensation? There is a difference, not a clear difference, but there is a difference still.
Well, I would not go as far as to say the ruling dispensation, but the media definitely.
Right.
A certain section of the media.
Okay, you're like doing interrogation training. Let me frame this differently. So, Mrs. Dulat, do you rule out any involvement by the powers that be in the deliberate misinterpretation of the quote
No,
and
I don't rule out anything, but I have.
Thank you.
No, But I have no evidence of that. But I have clear evidence. It's very clear now that there is a campaign by the media to run down Farooq.
Yeah, and the book has become the means.
Absolutely, yeah, it is.
Okay, so I can understand the media. You've actually not been very complimentary about the PDP. There is this suggestion in your book that Mr. Doval helped the PDP in various ways, etc. So you can understand the PDP not liking your book. But why do you suppose so many people from the National Conference, including Farooq's own family, have come out this way?
I don't have an explanation for that, or I would rather not get into that part. You know, what happens in a family, I really wouldn't like to get into, and I don't know. But the point is that there is a controversy, and it has put a lot of pressure on Farooq. Let me put it to you like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's been quite silent. He hasn't come out and said, this is a total misinterpretation. I could
No,
not
I'm
possibly...
told he's told NDTV that I never said any such thing, which is fair enough.
Well, he never said the things that people are attributing to him.
Yeah.
But you aren't attributing those things to him, actually. So what he says to you and what people say he said to you are two different things.
Quite right, quite right.
Okay, now let's move away a little bit from the current controversy and talk a bit about the other things in the book. In your mind, the story of Farooq Abdullah and Delhi is in many ways a story of betrayal. You say Indira Gandhi betrayed him when Jagmohan was sent to Kashmir to topple his government.
Yeah.
You say, yeah?
Not only me, if you read B.K. Naidu also, it's very clear.
Yeah. I think everybody covering that period said that. Yeah. So and that Rajiv then tried to undo the damage by aligning.
Right. That is why Rajiv is the only Congress leader that Farooq got along with or was comfortable with. The problem or the pity here again is, I was sent to Srinagar in 1988-89. And I was told by headquarters that please make sure Farooq stays on our side. And I thought to myself, what is the need for that? Isn't Farooq already on our side? But there was an anxiety that Farooq, that is why if you read Mr. Narayanan's foreword, he says that if Farooq had not been with us, Kashmir may not have stayed with India.
I was going to ask you, because Mr. Narayanan in his forward praises not just you, but praises Farooq. And he says praise from Narayanan is blood from a stone, right? So it's very surprising.
No. But I was not the only one who's been fond of Farooq. Yeah. Narayanan was too. And he understood the importance of Farooq. And he appreciated whatever Farooq was doing for India in Kashmir.
In 1989, when what we now refer to as the insurgency starts, and you say in the book that it was planned completely by General Zia and the Pakistanis, etc. But
that's right.
The interesting is Farooq then is the government in Delhi more or less forces him out. Jagmohan creates problems for him.
Yeah, because there's a change of government.
VP Singh doesn't seem to understand, is happy to let Kashmir be consigned to the fire. Farooq goes off and lives in England. You go and see him, I think in Southend on Sea or somewhere. And he's living quite happily, quite modestly, with no real security.
Nothing. I was surprised. There was nothing. Except that he said to me, these guys have their own way of keeping a watch. And they've given me a number. If there's ever any problem, I have to just call that number. That's
a lot of help. And if somebody comes to assassinate you and you phone the police station, I mean...
His point was they're always watching.
Yeah. Okay. But so fair enough. Yeah. But if at that stage Farooq had opted out, and many people did write him off and did say that he's never going to come back. Remember, those were terrible times. People desecrated the grave of Sheikh Abdullah, which was guarded ironically by the Dogra regiment, protected from attacks, etc. There was every possibility that the Abdullahs had been written out of politics and that Kashmir was perhaps lost to us. But Farooq came back.
He came back.
Why did he do that?
He did that, I think there are various reasons. Most of all, he had not given up on politics. He was, smart as he is as a politician, he was waiting for the right opportunity to be asked back, to be wanted back. And his party desperately needed him back. So there was a time which came after militancy had peaked, I would think, in 93, 94, that his party men started saying that he should come back. I remember I used to maintain contact with quite a few of the senior leaders. And I remember talking to Shafi Saab, and I said, Shafi Saab, now you need to start fighting again. He said, yes, we're just waiting for our leader. So the moment, and obviously Farooq could be in the know of all that. So he wanted to come back, he wanted to be in politics, he wanted to be chief minister again. His party needed him desperately. And over and above everything, Delhi needed him.
So if he hadn't come back, what would have happened in Kashmir?
What would have happened in Kashmir? Well,
because VP Singh and co had various candidates for the leadership, none of whom cut much eyes, right?
Nothing, not at all. You see, it was not actually VP Singh. VP Singh didn't last very long. It was Narasimha Rao who started dreaming of getting the separatists into the game. And we were in contact with a lot of separatists, a whole lot of them, in fact. But it was a dream. There was no way that the separatists would have fought that 96 election. It's far too early. They didn't even do it in 2002.
Yeah.
Except for Lone Saab's son, Sajjad.
Yeah. Now that we're talking about the separatists and Pakistan, etc., let's now talk about you not as somebody who's seen Farooq Abdullah so close, but as what? It's very senior in IB, where you spend most of your career, and then chief of R&AW, and then overseeing intelligence relating to these matters in the PMO. These are the three very senior jobs you've held. Do you believe that the 1989 insurgency was completely Pakistan-inspired?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was. You see, one of the reasons given, or pretext given, was that, that rigging of the 87 election. That is the catalyst.
But you're not sure you accept that in the book?
No, I don't accept it because, I was not there. I was posted to Srinagar a year or so later. And when I got to Srinagar, I never heard anything of it till the insurgency broke out. And when it broke out, then they said it's a result of the rigging and this, that, and the other. But there were various factors, I would say. Factor number one, Pakistan would never have attempted this so long as Sheikh was alive. Yeah. Sheikh was too big for all this. And they knew that Sheikh would not stand for it. If he didn't go with Jinnah, he would never stand for any such thing. The second thing is that in the mind of the Pakistani generals, and it hasn't totally died. I would say 95% is gone, but it's not dead. They wanted revenge for 71.
Yeah.
It's been there. It still is there with a few extremist coups. And the other thing was that there was that fellow who started the JKLF, Sajjad's father-in-law, Amanullah Khan. He had just come back from England. And so it was a combination of a whole lot of things which encouraged Zia to start this whole thing, And
there was the Afghanistan factor also, that the war in Afghanistan was over.
Yeah,
and they had the arms, they had the mercenaries.
Well, people even used to talk about the Palestinian Intifada and this, that. Yeah, there were Kashmiris who said, but that's the fringe, who said that if Russia could be,
broken up,
sent out of Afghanistan, then what is India?
Yeah.
The thing is, the catch here is, and that is where I think our friend Yasin Malik went wrong. He believed that once they started this whole gunfight, or whatever there was, then Pakistan would come to their rescue, or Pakistan would support it. But Pakistan never intended to support it. Pakistan would never get into that kind of misadventure. They wanted these boys to carry out whatever.
That's where the Bangladesh parallels end, no? Because
That's
whatever
right.
your old outfit did with the Mukti Bahini, at the end, the Indian army went in legitimately and helped them. No?
Yeah, yeah. So they didn't have a Mukti Bahini, so to say. The JKLF was not really as good as the Mukti Bahini.
Now, when we have much less talk of Pakistan involvement, do you think, you say in the book Pakistan counts for nothing in Kashmir, especially after the last attacks, do you think Kashmiris have turned against Pakistan? Do you think Pakistan has lost interest? Or do you think we're underestimating this?
You know, I wrote a piece immediately after Omar's swearing in. I was there, I came down, and I wrote a piece which was published in the Asian Age, in which I made a point that everything has gone off well. What is required now for Delhi's credibility and also for Omar's credibility is the restoration of statehood. But in Delhi, we don't understand these things, you know.
Yeah.
There are no takers for this. Today also somebody was asking me, do you think statehood is likely to be restored? Because Omar has made a statement yesterday saying that after his recent meeting with the Home Minister in Srinagar, he has been assured again that statehood.
And various BJP leaders at different levels have said this is a distinct possibility, right?
Yeah, yeah. What the BJP says or doesn't say is that yes, we are committed to it, but it will be at a time of our choosing.
Yeah.
Nobody can dictate that to us. And I've heard that said quite a few times.
Okay. Also in the book, you touch on the IC 814 thing and your visit to Srinagar to
Jammu.
persuade,
It
to
was
Jammu,
Jammu
to
in those days.
persuade
Farooq.
the Kashmir government to release Zargar, was called Latram or something as well.
Yeah.
And over there, there were many different versions. So what actually happened?
What happened was it was the 30th of, I remember it very vividly. As you know, this hijack lasted a week from the 21st to the 31st. And on the 30th, a decision was finally taken by the CCS, the Cabinet Committee on Security, that all right, the Prime Minister said, all right, we let these three fellows go and we want our people back. So once that decision was taken and our negotiators in Kandahar were informed, then suddenly somebody woke up and said, well, 2 out of 3 are those are in Kashmir somewhere. So we'll have to get the Chief Minister's approval. So who is going to talk to the Chief Minister? So Brajesh looked around and said, this fellow will go. Yeah. So I said, sure, I'll go. But I asked Mr. Jaswant Singh, I said, sir, please make a call to Dr. Abdullah and then I will speak to him. And that's exactly what happened. Jaswant Singh spoke to Farooq. I went back to the office and I called up Dr. Saab and I said, sir, I'm coming. He said, I know you're coming, so you might as well stay with me. So I went. It was the month of Ramzan, and as I got there, he said, just hold on, I've got to go and say my prayers. And then he came back and broke his fast, had his juice and dates and whatever. And then he said, let's go into the other room, the bigger drawing room. I was sitting on his dining table. And we went in there and then he let loose, you know, how weak Delhi is, how idiotic Delhi is, and how much Delhi will regret this, and this should not happen. And it was Farooq, you know, theatre at his best.
Yeah.
You see, there is one thing in all this. Farooq has had very few opportunities to criticize Delhi. He's always been criticized. So these were 2 opportunities when Delhi appeared weak. So he let loose.
Apparently he spoke to you about the time Mufti's daughter.
Yeah, he told me. He said, you are here again.
Yeah.
I said, sir, then I was with you. I was posted in Srinagar. Now I am a messenger of Delhi. So please listen to me. So it went on for a long time. At the end of it all, he said, you can take that other fellow, but I'm not going to let this killer go, this Latram go. And I said, it won't happen. It's going to be 3 or nothing. So he said, then I'm going to resign. So I said, well, if you're going to resign, then I'll come along with you. The rest of the story is known. So we went to meet Gary Saxena. Gary being Gary, he said, Dr. Saab, you're a big man. You can't throw in the towel like this. Come on, sit down. If Delhi is decided, they must have thought it over. So sit down, have a drink, and that was it.
In retrospect, you were at that stage no longer chief of R&AW, or were you still chief?
I was.
You were still chief of R&AW?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah? Do you think we should have released the prisoners?
Yeah, absolutely. There was no other option. You see, the option was actually in Amritsar, when the plane landed in Amritsar. If we goofed anywhere, it was in Amritsar.
And that's never been satisfactorily explained, no? Why we goofed so badly?
Indecision.
Yeah, I've heard that said that the Cabinet Committee on Security couldn't meet properly. They
met. We met through the night, but we couldn't come to a decision.
But what decision was that? Stop the plane from taking off? Why was that a problem?
I agree with you, but nobody could say that much.
Really?
What the DG Punjab was waiting for was exactly something like that, clear instructions. Because he said, and the DG is a friend, a batchmate, and I spoke to him at length about this later on. He said, my chief minister was very clear. He didn't want bloodshed in Amritsar. And Delhi was not giving me any clear instructions, except for saying, why don't you shoot down the tires, as if they were bicycle tires, he said to me. So the whole thing turned out to be a joke,
Yeah, it is sad. I'll just, to finish off, come back to this book, which I think you should read. It's do not believe everything you see in social media. It's a very incisive, interesting, and readable portrayal of what's been happening in Kashmir. I want to just summarize of the two controversies. We'll come back to them. One is the controversy is Farooq Abdullah apparently on social media told you that he was in favor of abrogation and he had advance knowledge.
Never.
In fact, he had never told you this. He had no advance knowledge.
No.
What he had said was because he had worked so long with Delhi.
Always worked with Delhi.
He had hoped that Delhi would have consulted him before doing something, especially as he'd met Prime Minister Modi before that.
Yeah, that's right.
And then maybe if it had to be done, it should be done constitutionally through the assembly or whatever.
Yeah.
That's one.
That's
Two,
right.
the other controversial claim that he wanted to be chief minister and
No, there's no controversy about that. I don't think that anybody will challenge.
Oh, it has been challenged on social media.
It has been challenged? By whom?
By various Twitter people. But your view is
that Farooq will never challenge it. He was very, very clear. The whole idea of sending Omar to Parliament explains it.
Yeah.
Why would he send Omar to Parliament if Omar was going to be chief minister? Farooq was very clear, and he said it to me not once, at least 3-4 times, I will be chief minister. I'm going to be chief minister. And he wanted to be chief minister because, not for any other reason, not because he was power hungry. He knew that this was going to be an extremely, extremely difficult period for Kashmir. And Omar will realize this in time to come. In fact, I quoted Vijay Dhar, and he'll be there day after tomorrow. You can ask him that question if you like. I asked Vijay, I said, now that the elections are taking place, is Omar going to be chief minister? He said, no. Omar will never be able to manage it. We need Farooq. And Kashmir needed Farooq. That's my view as well.
Okay. And since we're on the subject, if you were still advisor to the Prime Minister on Kashmir, which you were for a long time, and they said to you, we are going to abrogate Article 370, what advice would you give?
When it was done?
Yeah. What would you have said?
I would have said, hold your horses, let's talk to Farooq. It may not be necessary at all. Let's talk to Farooq.
Okay.
Why do we not engage with Farooq? Why are we not engaging with Farooq?
You wouldn't have said don't do it?
Well, the implication would be that don't do it, yeah. I wrote against it, I spoke against it.
I know, that's why I'm asking you.
Yeah, because it made no sense to me, There was nothing left of 370, it was only a fig leaf. Little bit of dignity that the Kashmiri felt. Now what is happening is that, it's very unfortunate what is happening in Kashmir. ever since 47, let's accept this, that there has always been a religious issue in this,
Yeah.
in Jammu and Kashmir. Now we have brought it to the forefront. Now if you talk to Kashmiris, they said, now it's Hindu-Muslim.
Yeah.
Look at what's happening to Muslims in the country. I mean, that's the way the Kashmiri talks,
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I think we've covered it all, but just a final question. When you published the book, and I think everybody who read it said if there's a criticism, it's too pro-Farooq, nothing else. And suddenly this controversy breaks and people take things out of context and talk about them. How does it make you feel?
Makes me feel rotten, because it was intended to be pro Farooq. It was written for Farooq, and I felt I owed it to Farooq. In fact, I've said somewhere that this is a book that I had in my mind ever since I first met Farooq Abdullah in, I think it was October 87. So I felt, this is my 5th book.
I know.
Every book of mine, the core of it has been Kashmir.
Yeah.
So I felt that if I have written so much about Kashmir, I owe it to the great man that I should write a book to him, on him. And I don't know how people will read this book, but
I imagine the controversies will blow over and the book
I
will
don't
remember
think it was ever intended to be anti-Farooq.
Yeah, no, that's not one phrase I would associate with. But I'm just intrigued by the way you've been hit by all these controversies. There's an element of George Smiley in the age of disinformation, not knowing what to make of it, right? A veteran spy stares at Twitter and wonders what the hell is going on.
I don't know what to make of it. You're right, you're right. I'm not Smiley, but I'm smiling all right.
That's a great note to end this on. Well, I'll see you at the book launch.
Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dulat. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.